Donald Cohen is on the line with us. Donald is the author of a brilliant book, The Privatization of Everything, and the website inthepublicinterest.org. He's the executive director of In the Public Interest. And Donald R. Cohen 12 is his Twitter handle. Donald, welcome to the program. Tell us, let's start out at the beginning. What are public goods?
Oh, that's a great question, and thanks for having me on, Tom. So how we define public goods are essentially those things that we all need to survive and to thrive, and those things that we can only do if we do them together. Now, that's a little different from what economists tend to think of public goods as those things that are in a market sense, but we think about public goods in a democratic sense, that we ought to be able to decide things like everyone should have health care, everyone should have access to child care, everyone should have access to senior care, we should all have access to good, every child should have access to good education. That's how we think about it.
What you're describing is what I've always referred to as the commons, in addition to the air we breathe and the water we drink, although those are arguably part of that too. Do you draw a distinction between public goods and the commons?
No, I don't. I know, and some call it social goods. Mm-hmm. So it's just no distinction at all. But I think that the important point we try to make is that there are all those things, including the things that you added, clean air, clean water, and all that, we can only do if we do them together. We can't do them individually. The market can't do it. It's the wrong instrument to do those things. And so that's an important idea that's at the core of what I want to talk about in the book, but and also my work.
Yeah, and doing them together literally means that the first three words of the Constitution, we the people, must do them, which is another way of saying government does them, which takes us in the opposite direction from Ronald Reagan's government's not the solution to your problems, it's the cause of your problems. Governments are instituted among men, as in the Declaration, to provide for the public.
There've been, excuse me, and so since Reagan, and even a little bit before, there's been a concerted, strategic assault on both the idea of government and the institution of government by ideological conservatives, by corporations that wanted a piece of the funds.
And by billionaires who don't want to pay their taxes.
Yeah, them too.
Forgive the interruption. You were going somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And privatization that we write about in the book is it was really interesting when you talk about Reagan. Reagan didn't succeed in privatizing a whole lot, but what became true during the Reagan era, by strategists, people like Stuart Butler, Heritage, and Cato, and others, that privatization could be used as a way to break, in their words, the pro-government budget consensus, right? By directing public demands to the private sector.
Right.
This is a strategy, not just a way to go for the cash.
Right, and the strategy is figure out a way to make a buck on public goods. Is that pretty much it?
Well, pre-COVID, there was about $7 trillion spent every year by governments in America, from school boards and water boards to the federal government. And so you think about, if you're Jamie Dimon, or you're the head of a private prison company, or others, you're basically thinking one thing: how do I get my hands on that cash?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So to bring this from the general to the specific, we have this debate going on in Congress right now about what should be in the Build Back Better bill and in the BIF bill. What's your take on those in the context of this issue of public goods?
Well, I haven't seen the news this morning, so this is a moving target. But I think there's some, the positive things that have been added to the discussion are the things that people are calling the care economy. That social infrastructure is part of physical infrastructure. I'll deal with physical infrastructure next. Is that really everybody? Medicare. Well, maybe we'll get hearing. We should also get vision and dental, all that. But maybe we'll get hearing. So we're expanding the notion that people over the age of 65 who need health care also have hearing as part of our health. Our ears are connected to our body. Same, child care. Child care in America, every parent needs child care in America. It is a fully privatized public good. So this, again, the progress we'll make, whatever that turns out to be on child care, kind of, heads in the direction of recognizing that. And, there's money, there'll be hopefully money for elder care. There's money for, I don't know if it's still in the bill or not, money for higher education. Community colleges, I think, got taken out, but other stuff is still in. Again, that recognizes that, Pell Grants are still in, that people need to be educated. We need an educated America. College is and higher education is a huge part of that. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody. And if we put the cost, if we turn it into a commodity and put the entire cost of education on each individual, then two things happen. People either don't go or they get saddled with, decades of debt.
Neither of which is a good outcome, either for those individuals or for society as a whole.
Exactly.
Last question here, Donald. We're talking with Donald Cohen, the executive director and founder of In the Public Interest. InThePublicInterest.org is the website. How do we bring about? I realize you're trying to do this with your book, The Privatization of Everything, and your organization, InThePublicInterest.org. But more broadly, how do we start a discussion of what has essentially become the conventional wisdom since the Reagan era? This idea that anything government can do can be done better by a private for-profit corporation, or pretty much anything. Well, actually anything, even the Army. I mean, we had more contractors, and we spent more money on contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan than we did on our actual Army. We now have private people doing KP duty, which is actually very dangerous in the battlefield, because normally the person working in the kitchen could grab a gun and go out and shoot if the base got overrun. But now you've got to have the guy in the kitchen plus a soldier with a gun who's watching the guy in the kitchen in case he needs to defend both of them. It's insane. Yeah. So how do we begin this discussion?
I'd say there's a couple things. One of which is it's really important to understand that private companies do one thing: they sell things, right? And so their interests are different from ours, right? So there's really is a difference between public things and private things. So they sell things, and private prison companies, their interests are to have because they get paid per diem per inmate. They want more inmates. They want people in prison. Right. Private water companies want to sell more water because they want more volume. So they don't, conservation is against their interests, and you kind of go down the line there. You can be pro-business, anti-business, all that, but let's recognize what they're about, and whether that gets in our way and whether that serves our interests or not. The second thing, of course, is, the cheaper, better, faster. It's simply not true. Now we're swimming upstream in describing that to the American public, given the intensity of the anti-government assault, but we still got to do it, right? And think of one thing I say to a lot of folks is every dollar when you privatize something, right, or outsource something, every dollar that's being spent for returns to investors, profits, executive compensation, lobbying expenditures, all business expenditures, is money that's not going into the service, right? They say they're more efficient. We say, okay, you're going to spend less money on what are you going to spend less on? Lower quality food. That's what they did in prisons in Ohio and Michigan, and it turned out there were maggots in food. Lower pay for staff, reduced pensions and benefits and all that, fewer staff to provide necessary services. So cheaper means spending less on things that matter to all of us. Right. And then the third thing I'd say is, the state, the power of government is really both invisible and ubiquitous at the same time, right? And I believe it's important for us to sort of recognize the stuff that's all around us that's actually pretty good. I look at my wall in my office, there's paint on the wall. The paint used to have lead in it. That was a government action driven by popular demand. I turn on the faucet, water comes out, and it's basically pretty clean. That's a government and public service. And so it's really important for us to understand that. And then I will say one more thing is, government's easy to criticize. There's a lot of it. It's complicated. We live in a crazy world. But it's always important to lift it back up to the public purpose, right? When we get to the infrastructure bill, infrastructure is about mobility and communications, right? And so we need to remember that as well.
Yeah, amen. Donald Cohen, the website inthepublicinterest.org. His new book, The Privatization of Everything. Donald is the executive director and founder of inthepublicinterest.org. Donald R. Cohen 12 on Twitter or at Pub Interest. Donald, thank you so much for dropping by.